Hello, cartoon fanatics, it's RJ, and welcome back to another Cartoon Corner on the latest Rick and Morty. Today, we have Rick and Jerry. Rick and Jerry. I never thought I would ever have to say that, but yeah! It was advertised as a Rick and Jerry episode, and that's technically what it is. So, we got Rick, we got Jerry, they do something together and come to some sort of understanding, I think. At least that's what it seemed like. I was very tired when I watched this, but still, let's get into it. So it starts like it does in the trailers, where Jerry's feeling all sorry for himself in his apartment, and then Rick just bursts in. He's like, "Rick and Jerry adventure! Let's go! The fate of the universe depends on you, Jerry!" And he just takes him off, and Rick's still trying to be like, "Oh yeah, they need your help, Jerry. There's like this thing, and only you can do it because you've got the thing that they like." And Jerry, at this point, he's not buying it at all. He's like, just admit it. It's bad. It's gonna be bad. So what it turns out is Morty pretty much told Rick that he needed to take Jerry on a pity adventure, sort of. Just something to cheer him up. Because Morty was afraid that if Jerry didn't have a win, then he would end up just lounging in utter sorrow, which is what he was doing before Rick burst in. So, now we have the reason, because we all knew that Rick wouldn't just do this on his own. And that was kind of advertised in the commercial as well. But here we go, there they go, and we get to actually see two scenes from the initial promos, the initial commercials for season 3, which was cool to see. So we get a chance to see the crazy roller coaster, which is called the Whirly Derby or something along those lines. But the point is, Rick takes Jerry to potentially the safest place in the multiverse. It's an amusement park where you can't die. So any sort of ideas like eating too much and having a heart attack or accidentally getting injured on a ride, none of that happens in this place. They got this protective shield that if anything seriously inducing happens to them, they just come back to life. It's no big deal. So that's actually kind of a pretty cool concept, yet utterly terrifying at the same time, like so many other things in Rick and Morty. Cool, but terrifying. So basically, Rick took Jerry to the toddler's version of the multiverse, which Jerry's okay with, and for a while it actually seems like they might be starting to bond, which is very interesting. Jerry's kind of going on about stuff, and Rick's more or less following along. But then again, this is Rick, so he's probably just trying to play along and be civil to Jerry, just out of respect of Morty. Because Morty's the one that spurned this all on. But in the midst of all this, Jerry's actually starting to think that he's making a connection with Rick, and Rick's like, "Yeah, your marriage was messed up, man. You two needed to work some things out." And Jerry says, "Oh yeah, you're right. Maybe this is good for all of us." And just when Jerry thinks he's starting to warm up to Rick, he gets pulled aside by this underground alien brigade. They look like giant fluff balls with E.T. faces. I don't know. E.T. was the first thing I thought of when I saw these guys. But they're more fuzzy than anything. They're like if E.T. was a bear. There we go. If E.T. was a bear, he would probably look like this. But apparently they were the original guys that built together this amusement park. And when Rick had been there, who knows how long ago, he messed things up for them, and now they want their revenge. And they want Jerry to help them with that. So in order to do that, they have to go on the roller coaster, the Whirly Derby. And there is one tiny spot in the Whirly Derby where they can kill Rick, because it just slightly goes out of the field that allows people that die to come back to life. So Jerry initially follows along when he really thinks about all the bad things Rick has done, and then he kind of sort of falls in and out. It's hard to tell exactly if Jerry's siding with Rick or against Rick for most of this episode. In fact, I don't even think Jerry knows which side he's on. He's like at odds, because he's easily swayed, I'll put it that way. He hears one person's argument, he's like, "Oh yeah, you're right, I should do this." And then he hears the other person's argument, he's like, "Oh no, you're right, we should do the other thing." So he's just a very, very easy to convince kind of guy. Which is, that's Jerry, man, just Jerry, ugh. But, so Jerry takes Rick onto the coaster, And then at the last second, Jerry decides, no, this isn't a good idea. Rick actually said something nice to me before this thing started, so we're gonna try and make sure that he stays alive. So in the attempt to make sure that Rick doesn't get killed, they managed to break the roller coaster and shut down the whole force field, which means the whole amusement park now, people that die are dead, just stay dead. So there's a couple of scenes that show the effects of that, which is not pretty, but you know, that's what happens when Rick destroys things behind him. Just utter chaos. And then from there, Rick and Jerry are kind of having an argument, and Jerry's all like, I'm sorry, it wasn't me, it was those alien guys, they told me to do it. And here Rick actually points out a very interesting part of Jerry's character that at least I had never thought of it before. But Rick points out that Jerry likes to play the victim role. Jerry's the guy that wants you to feel sorry for him because he's always the underdog. He never gets a win. He lost his family, he lost his house, he lost his job. He's just in squandering. And Rick says he just plays that role in order to get what he wants. And whether that's true or not, it's hard to say. But you can tell just by Jerry processing it during that scene that Jerry himself doesn't even seem to realize that he plays the victim role a lot. So he's just kind of in this mask-marked category, and he himself doesn't even realize that he's in this category. So in their attempts to get back to Earth, Jerry's kind of busy processing all of this while throwing a couple of zingers at Rick because he's still pretty mad at Rick. I mean, all of that built up tension that the two of them have isn't going to go away in the midst of one realization conversation. But that's kind of the juxtaposition. We'll get of the Rick and Jerry episode in a whole. They get on this ship to go back. Rick, like, part of him gets destabilized or something. He has, like, robotic parts and they shut him down so he can't harm anyone while they're on this public multiverse transit system. And then the E.T. leader guy from before manages to find him, and they all have, like, this really strange out-of-body experience. And despite all of that, despite them supposedly melding minds and souls for a brief couple of seconds, they all still can't stand each other. But now there's sort of like this mutual understanding between Rick and Jerry, where Jerry says he's not going to play the victim role anymore, he's actually going to stand up and do things for himself. And Rick's like, oh yeah, good for you, not nice seeing you, goodbye forever. So, at this point, yeah, I don't think Rick respects Jerry, but it does seem like they came to some sort of understanding, which is better than in the past. So I guess there was some development with those two there. But that's honestly, that's the main gist of the main part of the episode. The parts of the episode that actually interested me more were the B plot. Now in the B plot, Summer's going through some boy issues, and she finds one of Rick's machines to help her be more attractive so she can get this one guy back. And in turn, it makes her into a giant human monster instead. Beth, instead of calling Rick to get help like Morty suggested, tries to fix the problem herself, and that just makes Morty more infuriated. And he actually compares her to Rick, saying, like father, like daughter, you're just trying to be like Rick and doing things on your own. Well, sometimes you can't do that, and you especially can't do that because that's not how you know how to do things. So, at the end, Beth eventually also turns herself into this giant monster, and she goes with Summer, and they have a chat, and I think they have a heartwarming conversation. It's hard to tell because when they're in their gigantic inside-out form, they just make these sort of Wookiee noises. And the best part is they're doing it above the campsite where Summer's ex-boyfriend, or the guy that stood her up or something, just some guy she was interested in that turned her down for a more attractive girl. They're both sitting at this campsite and they're just watching this happen in confusion. The girl runs off because she's like, that's so heartwarming, I need to tell my mom I love her. So now it's just the guy that Summer got crushed and Morty just witnessing this. And this is where it gets really interesting in my opinion. This last sort of segment is what ties this episode together as more of a potentially leading up to something in the future. because Morty was absolutely terrifying in this last bit. He wasn't like scary to the audience, but I think this was the most anger or deviousness we had ever seen out of Morty up to this point. He's been kind of growing in boldness lately. We definitely saw smugness and intelligence in the last episode with the Vindicators, but now Morty just goes full on revenge mode on this guy. He sits there like he's some kind of supervillain just cooking the s'more and talking to this guy like, you made my sister cry. That's not okay. And he has the machine that Summer accidentally messed herself up with, and then we see at the very end of the episode that obviously the guy got messed up with the machine as well, except he doesn't know how to fix it. He's just kind of stuck like that for who knows how long. But yeah, that was utterly terrifying for that character. You could actually see fear on his face to think Morty, little innocent screams a lot Morty, was capable of that. And I think that's the most interesting part, because we're starting to see things from Morty that we didn't know he was capable of before. And now he's sort of gaining this more confident side of himself. And with that seems to come this more devilish side of himself, I want to say. And with that, it might possibly lead into a connection with Evil Morty, ? Because I know the fans have been dying to see Evil Morty come back. Evil Morty was a very fascinating character, and we don't really know a lot about him. And we know that the creators of the show said that if they were to bring Evil Morty back, they wanted to do it right. So it might be possible that watching sort of this character progression in our Morty might turn into us better understanding the Evil Morty. Possibly. Potentially. It's just kind of all in theory, but it's something to take home and think about for the week. Think about during the eclipse. Am I posting this before or after the eclipse? Well, whenever that happens, it's eclipse day, and you get to spend the rest of the day contemplating how Evil Morty might eventually tie into all of this. So there you go. There you go. I'd say Vindicators last week was still my favorite episode so far, but this one brought in some interesting ideas in terms of character relationships, and especially Morty's character progression. So can't argue with that. So if you like this episode, go ahead and put a thumbs up and press that like button. And don't forget to comment and subscribe as well. And I will see you next week for the next Rick and Morty.